everyone. In this presentation, I'm going to be looking at two restoration comedies, William Wycherley's The Country Wife and Aphra Behn's The Rover, and explore the notion of female hypocrisy. I'm going to be doing this by looking at 3 points of discussion. So firstly, I'll be looking at self-fashioning, then move on to the role of the mask and false appearances, and then thirdly, virtue disguise, with particular focus on the virtuous gang. And my aim is to think about the reasons why female hypocrisy was evident in Restoration comedy and theatre. So according to some accounts, Restoration culture tolerated and indulged false appearances. Stephen Greenblatt states that in the previous period, the Renaissance period, there was an increased self-consciousness about the fashioning of human identity as a manipulable, artful process. So men of the Restoration period felt that the outer appearance ought to reflect the inner intention, whereas in the Restoration period, there were some that thought the outer self ought not to be a true reflection of what one was like. So as a result of this, people would fashion themselves by masking their persona in order to disguise their unchangeable identity beneath it. This is otherwise known as self-fashioning. J.G. Barker Benfield says about fashioning, the word fashion came into wide currency as a way of designating the forming of self, quite literally the imposition of a person upon physical form. Greenblatt also goes on to describe this self-fashioning as a way of craving for freedom, which is actually quite prevalent for women of this period and their role in the Restoration comedies, and that will be explored more as we go through. So in William Wycherley's The Country Wife, this self-fashioning attitude manifests itself through a virtuous gang, for they are carrying out a performance and in turn affecting who they are. On the outside, they appear to be ladies of quality by their status and apparel. However, within they are promiscuous and feisty. The true identity of these women is revealed when Horner challenges Lady Fidget, saying, "Your virtue is your greatest affectation, madam." It would seem Will Pritchard is right when he argues that some of the anxieties about appearance from the Renaissance period has come over into the Restoration period. Wycherley emphasises the anxieties about the self-fashioning and consequential instability and falsity of women. It is evident that he's called them the virtuous gang as an ironic statement. They are not virtuous than they appear to be. Therefore, Wycherley is satirising the superficiality of self-fashioning. These women seek to express their sexuality through their forms of disguise, which leads us on to talk about the mask. So some disguises came in the form of masks. J.L. Stein notes that the mask had become something more than a prop for a masquerade. It became a toy with which to play adult games. In the beginning, it was used to protect a lady's makeup from the ravages of the outside air. Then it soon became the instrument by which she could pass incognito in public. So the mask manifests itself in these plays through the ways the women play games of deceit. In Aphra Behn's The Rover, Helena takes on a disguise in order to go to a carnival, and she approaches her governess Calais, and Calais responds, "What, go and masquerade? 'Twill be a fine farewell to the world, I take it. Pray, what would you do there?" Helena says, "That which all the world does, as I am told, be as mad as the rest and take all innocent freedoms." Helena disguises herself in order to transgress class and status boundaries. She is set to be a nun, but she wants to love and be loved before her brother sends her off to the convent. So, like the ladies in the virtuous gang, Helena masks herself in order to act with freedom. However, the irony in both of these plays is that these women have to disguise themselves in order to seek freedom, suggesting that it cannot be complete freedom. They are in fact playing into the artifice of society and in turn becoming artificial. Will Pritchard talks about the hypocrisy of the masked women, and he says, "If an immodest woman could convincingly impersonate modesty, what distinguished her from one whose modesty was genuine?" Nothing according to William Wycherley. He says, "By that mask of modesty, which women wear promiscuously in public, they are all alike, and you can no more know a kept wench from a woman of honour by her looks than by her dress." Wycherley expresses these concerns in more detail in the play about masked women through Pinchwife when he says, masks have made more cuckolds than the best faces that were ever known. In that sense, the mask obliterated all distinction of rank. Lady Fidget and Horner reflect the Restoration mindset through their dialogue when Lady Fidget says, "We women are saviours of our honour, the jewel of most value and use, which shines yet to the world unsuspected, though it be counterfeit." And Horner replies, "Nay, and is even as good were true, provided the world thinks so. For honour like beauty now only depends on the opinion of others." In other words, the innate qualities of a person are unimportant in comparison to how someone presents themselves. The notion of disguise becomes desirable because the implication is that to be thought of as honourable or beautiful is as good as it being true. So in The Rover, in Act 1, Scene 2, Helena and Florinda take on a new disguise as gypsies. And Helena says, "Sister, there's your Englishman, and with him a handsome proper fellow. I'll to him, and instead of telling him his fortune, try my own." Ellen T. Goodson notes the relevance of their disguise as gypsies when she says, "Their initial costumes as gypsies allow them to approach men in a feminised, desirous way. Gypsies already occupy the role of outcast on the liminal edge of society. By taking on their looks, Florinda and Helena put themselves and their sexuality outside the confines of cultural expectation." There is an interesting way in the contrast between the ways the playwrights enable their female characters to express their sexual liberty. In The Rover, it's through physical disguise, for Florinda and Helena are taking on the disguise of a gypsy, whereas in The Country Wife, the virtuous gang affect inequalities to express their sexual liberty. One of the qualities that they do that with is virtue, and I've suggested here that virtue is used by women to disguise their real intentions. All three women are aware of their associations that they have with chastity and morality because of their status, and they manipulate that status in order to act liberally. Laura J. Rosenthal comments upon the women's manipulation of a social position, and she assesses the effect that it has upon Horner. She says, "The elite fidget ladies become the objects of his desire not for any superior beauty or sexual skill in comparison to the ladies he has been visiting, but because they have been socially marked as more desirable." So therefore, Wycherley not only satirises the characters, but the role of the gentlewomen in this period. This ties into the idea of the period's idea of self-indulgence and self-fashioning. So the last time we see the virtuous gang is in Act 5, Scene 4, when they visit Horner and, inspired by wine, reveal their true nature. In the video I'm about to show you, it's a scene where they are saying that their virtue is a disguise.
Drunk of our 2 bottles, let us speak the truth of our hearts.
Agreed.
My Miss Brimmer, for the truth is nowhere else to be found.
Lovely Brimmer. Let me enjoy it first.
No, I never thought of the gallows until I tried. Dear Brimmer, thou makest our husband short-sighted and our bashful gallant. Oh,
The gallant butler, lovely Lara.
Drink, thou representative of a husband. Damn us. Oh, the filthy toads whose mistresses nowadays do stuffs. They're having me fancy to warn the elders of being common, whilst women of quality like the finest stuffs lie untumbled with unasked for.
Why would you never give a friend a wink then?
Hey, your reputation frightened us as much as ours did you. You were so notoriously lewd.
And you so seemingly honest.
Oh, the detergent.
So expensive? You allow freedom, you say?
Aye.
That I was afraid of losing my little money as well as my little time. Both of which my other pleasures required.
Money, so you talk like a little fellow now. Do such as we expect money.
Oh, I beg your pardon, madam. I have heard that great ladies, like great merchants, set with a higher price upon what they have, because they're not in the necessity of taking the First off,
None of us is sure about girls.
For love is better known by liberality than by jealousy.
So in this scene, Lady Fidget basically summarises the deception effectively when she says, "Our reputation, Lord, why should you not think that we women make use of our reputations, you men of yours, only to deceive the world with their suspicion? Our virtue is like the statement's religion, the Quaker's word, the gamester's oath, and the great man's honour, but to cheat those that trust us." So here Lady Fidget admits the hypocrisy of her and her fellow ladies' actions, but tries to justify it by comparing their use of virtuous reputation to a man's reputation. In the same way that Horner uses his reputation as impotent to express his sexual liberty, they use their reputation as virtuous to exercise theirs. Pritchard summarises this nicely when he says that the virtuous gang masks falsehood under a saintly show. To summarise then, the Restoration comedies were concerned with the falsity and hypocrisy of women. They highlighted the flaws in the way the Restoration mindset thought about appearance and inequality, and in turn satirised it on the public stage. Wycherley used the hypocrisy of the virtuous gang to represent the affectation and sexual manipulation of the Restoration women. He highlights the ways that women used to self-fashion themselves in order to keep up appearances to hide their true intentions. The women do not disguise themselves physically, but internally, for they use their association with virtue as a mask to the fact that they seek sexual liberation with Horner. Their identity is manifested primarily in display of mannerisms. Whereas Aphra Behn uses the characters Helena and Florinda to emphasise the power of physical disguise. They both disguise themselves as gypsies in order to approach men in a feminised and available way. To a certain extent, this enabled them to act liberally and transgress class and status boundaries. Like Wycherley, Behn was making the point that disguise was a powerful way for a woman to act freely. However, both noted the irony that the woman must be in disguise to be free, and so critiqued the overall notion of female hypocrisy in their comedies. Thank you for listening. Any questions? Questions?
Do you think that the presence of Althea in the play gives a kind of counterpoint to sort of this gang and
Yeah.
allegedly hypocrisy?
Yeah, I think that she does. I think that it sort of emphasises their corruption in a way, and I think I think it's very well done in the way that he's kind of used them and their status to make that kind of comment, because of the fact that they are so restricted by their status as well. So I think, so they were not able to act. That's why they have to affect internally, because they can't do it physically and in a obvious way because of their restrictions in society. So I think it's good that he has contrasted them with here as well.
So is that suggesting then that there's nothing inherently hypocritical about women's behaviour, that it's conditioned by society?
Yeah, I think because of the time as well, they were moving away from Puritan rule, and they were kind of more liberal. I think they went to a very sort of liberal king, rakish king, as well, and they had that kind of influence coming down into society that maybe there was kind of, I think it was heavily influenced by society, and I think because they were coming away from the traditional ways, and I think the aristocracy had more of they became more of an institute. They were sort of rebelling. It was like a rebellious act against that Puritan rule, I think. And so the women, I think it became more of a society thing for women to act in that way and feel pressure to act that way.
Do you think, particularly in The Country Wife, because I'm sorry I haven't read the book, but do you think there's sort of a celebration of the sort of hypocrisy and the kind of ridiculousness of kind of women's disguise, and is it kind of, would you say it's kind of like an expose of it, or more kind of a celebration, and it's all kind of part of the fun of London life?
Yeah, I think it is, like, because the upper class would have been the ones that would have been seeing these places, they were the ones that could afford it. So I think it was a very self-conscious thing, but I think it wasn't quite mirroring society, it was more of like a social commentary. So I think rather than, they were probably celebrating it, but they were also very much exaggerating it and satirizing it. So it was kind of like people would have been sitting there and knowing about it and knowing that they were guilty of it. But I think it was more of a commentary rather than like it was a satirization, so it wasn't so much like a celebration of it. Maybe personally,